Welcome to another episode of Meander Travel Podcast. My name is Julie, and I'm sitting here with my husband, Tony.
Hello.
And our fabulous producer, Caleb.
Hey, hey.
We're really excited to bring you our Paris 2024 Olympics podcast. This is awesome. We're going to talk about a few different things, your expectations and fears around possibly going to an Olympics, how you plan for something as big as going to the Olympic Games, what kind of games and events should you choose, and just all kinds of things surrounding an Olympic trip. So we're going to discuss that in this episode. So sit back and relax and enjoy, and wheels up.
We're gonna be two hearts running wild.
All right. Olympics. This is our second one. This is not our first. We first, we'll give you a little backstory about how we became, Olympophiles? What do we call these things, the people that go to all the Olympics?
Well, we used to say we'd be Olympic junkies, but
Olympic
since
junkies.
we've
Let's
only
go with
done
that.
two,
I think I
don't
made
know
up a word
if
instead.
we can.
Okay, so our backstory. We went to the Olympics back in 2010. It was the Vancouver Winter Olympics. But how we got there was kind of a funny story. We were at a work meeting on a trip, and we were sitting around with some friends that live in Vancouver but also have a place up at Whistler Blackcomb. And we're talking to them, and all of a sudden, while we were with them that day, they announced this is many years before that, they announced where the Winter Olympics were going to be for that year. Well, they said, we got a place, you guys should come. We're like, hey, don't ask us unless you are meaning it, because we will come. And there's about a 30-year age gap between us and them. And we told them that, yes, we'd love to. But then we kind of said, hey, we got to give them the out. So they might want to ask other people and not these young kids. We were kind of kids back then a little bit. And then we asked that, hey, you might have some friends. Do you want to take anybody else? And they said, nope, we asked you. We want you to come. So we said, well, then we are coming. And we planned our trip to go up to Vancouver, and we had a blast with them and their family. Was up there for 8-9 days. We saw, what did we see? We didn't see a lot of activities like the actual sports, but we did partake in a lot of the activities that go along with the Olympics.
You know, we didn't have as many funds back then, and the trip itself was expensive, and we just didn't know how to schedule some of those events. We didn't have maybe enough money for all the different events we wanted to go to, and just being part of that Olympic atmosphere was actually half the fun for us. But I do think that our friends might unfriend us if they think there's really a 30-year gap between us. Because that's not close. So if they're listening to this, we're sorry,
old.
Mike and BG, you guys are awesome. And we
20.
thought we were younger than
20?
we were.
20.
At any rate, it was a fantastic time. And we did go to, did we only really go to one official event?
One special event, and that was the ski jumping. But we did award ceremonies too. So at that Olympics, a lot of things were all tied together in one little community, one little area in Vancouver. I mean, up in Whistler. So all the different events were essentially located, where at some Olympics they're spread out. But on that one, where we were staying, we were blocks away from being able to walk around and see, the medals being awarded, all kinds of.
We got to see, I distinctly remember Bodie Miller getting, I think, silver or.
I don't remember.
I
don't remember who.
It was
but
fun.
It was fun.
It was really, really exciting. Yeah.
One of the things that we thought was the coolest was the attire. I mean, everybody there at that Olympics was so excited to be there. Everybody's in a great mood, and everybody's wearing a ton of attire, clothes from their countries. So we actually made it a game to see how many different countries we could find represented by their clothing. Hats, mittens, scarves, jackets, ski pants, you name it, they had it. And we were constantly searching and looking, and we would talk to people and ask them where they're from. But I think we got like 30 different countries that we saw actual clothes from.
There might have been more than that. And I made a really, really cool photo book from that, part as a gift to give to our hosts because they were so welcoming and drove us around, and we just had so much fun with them, and they were just so sweet to us. But I did a big photo book, and in that photo book, I have a collage of all the countries from around the world that we saw. And some of them are very unique and unusual and not countries that you would expect to necessarily see, or some of them you might not even have heard of. So that was kind of a fun collage in that photo book to see all the different countries. It's pretty cool.
So we only got to see ski jumping, And we got to see a little bit of some of the cross-country skiing as we went by it, but that was just by fluke chance as they were racing on the course that we had to walk past.
True.
But what we learned on that trip was we had to do things differently if we ever wanted to go again. But at that time, we're like, we're going to every Olympics. This is what we're going to do from now. We're going to become junkies.
It was a very festive and just kind of like a kumbaya world atmosphere. I mean, it was a really, really, I don't know, you can't duplicate it. I don't know what the feeling would be, but it was neat.
So at that time, we said we're going to go to everyone from then on. And fast forward 14 years before we got to another Olympics. Yeah, so we didn't.
Oh, we had
didn't follow through.
children?
Yeah, kids and funds and other trips, I guess. And just our time got away from us and planning. But as you heard in previous episodes, we started talking about going to this year's Olympics, and we did things different. We planned a lot differently. So, but before we get into the planning aspect, some of the things that people like to talk about, and when they think about going to Olympics or something this big, is their expectations and their fears about going to a big games. And there was a lot this year for that.
Well, let's think about if you're going to plan a big trip. I bet a lot of the things that are stumbling blocks for people thinking about going to the Olympics, they're probably like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even think about going that. How crazy is it going to be in that town? Like, forget about it. Or another thing that might be afraid of is security. How am I going to be safe with terrorist possible attacks? Just all the different things that go with the crowds. And then also the expense, super expensive. Those are the three different things we're going to discuss a little bit, because I imagine those are fears that you all might have and wonder, can I even do a trip like this? And we're here to tell you that you can, and then we'll discuss a little bit of each of those things. So the crowds.
Well, the crowds, first of all, this Olympics that we went to is in Paris, and already it's an extremely busy city, and everybody's thinking, okay, it's going to be absolute mayhem with all of that goes on in Paris, and then you add the Olympics to it. Well, it didn't actually happen that much. So some of the fears that you have about the big crowds is there wasn't. They weren't there. Come to find out as we got close to the trip time that there was a lot of hotels that weren't booked full and events where still had a lot of tickets, because I think a lot of the people weren't going. They weren't signing up because they were afraid of the crowds and safety and whatever. So they just weren't coming. So we actually enjoyed much to a different than what we thought was going to happen. We were going to be jam-packed wall to wall with people. It was lovely.
Well, you wouldn't want the Olympics to not have good attendance, and I don't know that this one didn't have good attendance necessarily. However, I also believe that a lot of the local population, the Parisians, probably left town. They thought this is going to be a nightmare. I won't be able to get to work. I'm just going to leave. So I think that sort of evens out the score then. You have an incoming population of tourists, but then you have a whole big population of people exiting the city as well. So it kind of evens itself out. So we never waited in line for a table. We never waited in line to get into the metro station, or even, we really weren't even crammed into the metro cars themselves. Ever. It was easy peasy.
We took the metro every single day, multiple times a day on some days. Paris is a great place to walk, but at that time for the Olympics, Paris had a lot of gates and things closed due to, hey, you want to walk in that straight line to get to that area? Well, you couldn't, because you had to take 17 detours to get around events or police blockades, just trying to corral the traffic and keep things. So the metros were the way to go at the Olympics.
I don't even think we took an Uber the entire time, or a taxi the entire time we were in Paris. It was slick.
So that leads us into security. A lot of people are afraid about the security on something of this size. And in today's world, there was a lot of talk about what would happen at the Olympics and having an open air opening ceremonies. And there was a lot of fear about terrorism. And I'll just say that I think they had 40,000 police.
Yeah, that's the number I read too. They hired over 40,000 police and security personnel
from all over. And I saw people from Japan that had police uniforms on that were helping. They sent their own forces to help with the Parisian forces and the France forces. So everywhere you looked, there was cops. You never had to worry about anything.
I think all of the pickpocketers also went on vacation. They were probably like, forget this. I'm not even going to attempt it for these 3 weeks or 6 weeks if you count the Paralympics as well, because there was just everywhere you went, on street corners, in the metro. I mean, it didn't matter. And they were in like groups of 10 and 12.
Standing
And
around
with
watching.
dogs, and I mean,
We did see him talking to people, though. We saw them, like, hey, they had some small people a group of people pulled off the side talking
every
to
once in a while,
We
yeah.
didn't know what it was, but great.
We just put our nose down, kept walking.
And in France, you have to have your papers ready. Like, you're supposed to be able to show a passport at any time, identification. They can ask for it. So, not sure about that, but we just kind of heard that, so we went with it, and we had our passports on us at all times. Had them secured in a chest bag. But,
In his man purse.
my man purse, my merce.
Having said that, did we think twice about a possible terrorist attack while we were in Paris? We did. It did occur to us. It's like,
Especially for the
it's a little bit
opening
scary,
ceremonies.
and France has had some issues. However, you can't live your life in fear. And I mean, that could happen where we live at any given time. You never know. So we decided that we were just going to, go for it. We did, the morning of opening ceremonies, did discuss. Well, I should say I discussed because I'm more security minded than my husband. I did want to talk about, okay, let's just have a emergency backup plan. If something should happen tonight with the opening ceremonies and we get separated for whatever reason, what do we do? Where do I go? How do I find you? Let's discuss. Like, I don't even know what I had to write the hotel address down on a piece of paper and stick it in my pocket just in case I didn't have phone
know you did that.
usage. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I knew the name of the hotel, but I didn't remember what the address was. And if I got discombobulated being on a different part of the city, I didn't know how to get there, and if I couldn't take the metro. And so I wrote it down so at least I could get back to my hotel if I had no phone and no you. So I did that, but
I did not. I kind of trusted I'd find somewhere to be safe. And that hotel was so close to the sun that the last place you'd want to go was that close.
No, but if we had to go the other direction or something, and he's a GPS in his head, so whatever. Anyway, we did think about it, but in the end, we felt so safe. And they did a remarkable job of security on that Olympics. I thought it was spectacular.
So we put our fears to rest on that one pretty quickly once we got to Paris after being in the south, because once we saw all of the police and the population, there was that many people on the streets, we were really not that concerned. And it was a lovely time in Paris, and we didn't worry about it so much.
Don't let it stop you.
Exactly.
Book the trip.
So then after that, another a fear for some people is the expense of an Olympics, because first of all, Paris is not cheap. France is not cheap, but add the Olympics onto that with the cost that would come with that and the money hiking for hotels and airfares, it's not cheap. Okay, so yeah, you can do some things where you try and save money at some spots, but you're going to spend some money going to an Olympics. It's just no way around.
Your hotel is going to be a big expense. And yes, they jack up the prices because they know what they have. And I saw so many people on forums say, is it okay if I just book my hotel outside of the city and then I train in? And I wouldn't recommend that. I think that would be hellaciously difficult. And you want to really enjoy the city and be able to walk around. And
It's Paris.
having said that, though, I mean, the metros were easier than we anticipated them being. So
True.
that
You
actually
just save money.
might not have been a bad plan. That probably would have been a good plan. We didn't think it would be ahead of time. Now looking back, it probably would have been okay. But that would be one way to save money, is go a little bit outside of the main city center. And then
tickets. You can buy tickets to some events a lot cheaper than others. You want to go to gymnastics, guess what? You're going to pay a lot of money. If you want to go to handball, you're probably going to get a cheaper ticket. So if you just want to go
archery or some of those oddball.
You just want to go to an event and be a part of the Olympics, and you don't have any great shakes to, like, I got to be at that single event, then you can probably go see quite a bit of the events at cheap prices.
Or you just could go to the city, and like we did for Vancouver, we went to one event and had the time of our life.
Correct.
So you don't even have to go to 10 different, events while you're there to still have a really, really good time and get a feel for it and see the city all lit up and looking its prettiest because it's trying to show off for the Olympics.
And there's also, like, I wouldn't call them free zones, but there's activity areas where they have big, huge jumbotrons, and it's on a big plaza or square, and 100, if not 1,000 people are milling around just looking at the jumbotrons, watching the events or watching the medal round.
And the opening
medal,
ceremonies were broadcast on all those giant TVs. You could have been in a crowd of people in the heart of Paris watching it on this huge screen like a movie theater. How cool would that be? You get a little bottle of champagne, you have some cheese, and you just enjoy watching it within the crowd itself. There are other ways to do it.
Okay, so hopefully if you got some expectations under control and you got your fears taken care of, then you start thinking, okay, we're going to do this. It's time to plan for it.
Woo woo! Let's go.
Lots of planning goes into taking a trip to the Olympics. But for us, first and foremost thing, well, the one thing that we did more than anything is we said, hey, get housing and get your airfare or start looking at it, because that's the key to everything is getting there and then being able to where you're going to stay. All the other stuff you can work around that. But on top of that, probably before you even do those, is if you know that you're going to do this like the next Olympics, is you got to start looking at tickets, because tickets go on sale way in advance. You got to get on a waiting list, and then you have to, when they announce that the tickets are available, then you have to jump on them really quick. Now, that said, you can also get them really late. You can get them on resale markets. There's a lot of ways to get tickets later on, hopefully.
If you're willing to roll the dice on that. Also, so I would say one of the groups that we got on specifically was Les Frenchies Facebook group, and we talked about this on a different one as well. But I just want to send out a reminder to make sure that you get on a Facebook group on the city itself, because it will also give you updates about the Olympics. And they will say, hey guys, this venue is being taken over by an Olympic, event, and you're not going to be able to go there normally. So if you wanted to go to a certain, I don't know, maybe a palace or something, you can't, because it is actually going to be occupied by an event. So you do want to look into some of those, and those Facebook groups are awesome for educating you on what's going on within the city itself.
So with that, Les Frenchies you mentioned, there's other ones, but for when it comes to the Olympics in particular, there are specific groups that are already set up and designed, and we talked about this in a previous episode, but it's important to know for when you're planning Olympics that you can be looking at a planning group that is for Cortina Milano for the Winter Olympics, but there's already one set up for the LA Olympics in 4 years from now, 2028. And they're like that one on Facebook is the Los Angeles 2028 Olympics Planning and Preparation -LA28. Take a breath. Whew, that's a long name. And there's already 41,000 people in that group making comments, planning, talking about what they're doing, asking questions, and the group is so helpful. Yeah, you get your smart asses every once in a while on there, but it's like any group on Facebook. But for the most part, people want to help each other, and they want to help, hey, learn from other people. How do you do ticketing? How do you do housing? How do you do this? And a lot of the questions get repeated, but the patience level on people is pretty good, and it's a great place to start.
Yeah, so for the housing aspect, I do want to remind you, it was kind of funny because we had one Airbnb booked early on, and we got a pretty decent price for it. But then as our planning progressed and we realized what events we were going to and what other kinds of things we wanted to do on our days off, we realized that that particular Airbnb wasn't in the ideal location. And so we kind of kept scouring through our booking.com, and we were able to find a different one, and we were able to cancel it, rebook in a different area that suited our needs a little bit better. So that was really lucky that we were able to do that, because a lot of time during the Olympics on booking.com, which we've also talked about before, we love it. When it's for a big event like that, a lot of times they will not allow any refunds. But this one we were able to do, so that was quite helpful.
In that, coming into the logistics part of it, was a kind of a, Julie said we switched places. A little scary to do that, because we'd also heard that there was a lot of problems with people having cancellations with their Airbnbs. And not so much the hotels, but Airbnbs, because I think people were realizing, I can make more money if I cancel it on these people and then resell it.
Or maybe they decided, you know what, we want to stay in ourselves and be here for the Olympics.
And not leave.
Yeah.
So with Airbnb or VRBO, we heard stories of that. We don't know them for sure, but we've heard about it on the forums. But then hotels, I think, are a little bit more secure. If you're booking through a hotel, you're probably not going to get canceled like that.
We
switched
felt
to a hotel.
that way.
That's how we felt. That's one of our fears. One of the fears that we went from an Airbnb to a hotel. But along with that is the logistics. I'll tell you what we did for our trip into Paris is that when we settled on a location finally that was best for events and for food, and we wanted to be kind of in the Latin Quarter, we picked a place that was right on the metro. Like, it was 50 yards to the metro where we walked downstairs from our front door of our hotel, And that same metro station got us to the main events that we wanted to go to. So we knew that we were going to be able to take that train to get really, really close to where all the places that we needed to if we wanted to take the train.
And also, super importantly, the airport.
Yes, as she just steals my thunder. I planned that specifically because it was a direct line from our hotel door, 50 yards down the stairs, and then we could take our backpacks and go right to the airport. So when we flew home on our last day, we didn't have to take cabs, taxis, different train stations, and jump around. We went right to the airport. And actually, you come up in the airport, not outside, and you're right inside. So if it's rainy, which it is a lot, you were right there.
I am getting quite used to and spoiled to have concierge Tony with me all the time. So I just go along for the ride and, oh, look here, we're in the airport. Cool. It's kind of nice.
So the tickets for the Olympic, every year, every time there's Olympics, people complain. They say it's great. They complain. They say it's great. The ticket platforms are unique. They're independent. They run on their own. The Olympic group does their own ticketing. This year, I don't know about the last ones, but this year in particular, if you were to buy a ticket, you could only buy it through them. If you were to try and resell it, no scalping. You had to sell it through their resale. Otherwise, there was just no way to transfer it. So it was kind of nice. You knew where you could go for all of them. But there was a lot of tickets late. So when you're talking about expenses, you might be able to pick up some tickets as soon as as close to the games as like a week or two. Like there's still tickets available. And we
I
thought
think they did reduce the price because there were some angry people who had purchased, category A or B, whatever seats early on and paid through the nose. And then later on, people could sometimes get some of those seats for cheaper.
Now, hypothetically, you could go and resell yours and hopefully get better price and then go back and buy the cheaper ones. But you're taking big gambles that somebody's going to want to buy and not know the difference as well.
And it's really experiential. I think that was the Paris Games. I think every Olympics is probably going to be a little bit different, and I really suspect that the LA Games will be sold out. It's just my hunch, but it's on American soil. I think they're going to be sold out. I think it's going to be sold out quickly, and I think it's going to be a lot less resale. But what do I know?
So let's go on to talking about our games. So
yes.
This is
so fun.
We thought we were going to go to like 9 different events, but we were also on the back end of the Tour de France coming up to Paris. And the one thing that we had booked right away was the hotels in Paris because you had to do it out in advance, and we had to pay for that up front. Well, we come to find out that they don't always announce what games and who's participating in the games until last minute, like maybe a couple weeks before.
Actually,
the
a
game.
lot of the events we had no idea who we were watching.
Yeah, we didn't know
you
who it
don't
was gonna
get to
be.
necessarily see Americans. You're gonna, and it might not be a final round, although you can book some of the final rounds, like the gold medal rounds. But some of the other ones, you have no idea what you're going to.
You know you're booking the medal rounds, but you don't know who's going to be in it. But the first preliminary rounds. So, for example, before the opening ceremony, 2 days before, they started soccer matches. Football, but soccer matches.
Football.
And we were going to be down in the south of France coming up to the Olympics on the 24th to go see and be in town for the opening ceremonies. Come to find out that there was a soccer match that was going to be in Marseille, 30-minute train ride from where we were currently at that time. And we found out that it was going to be men's USA versus France in Marseille. We're like, epic. We're like, how do we not go to this? We have to go to this. We're only 30 minutes away. But we had to get a hotel room in Marseille, and then we had to change our train tickets to be able to go from Marseille up to Paris. And then we also had to just eat a hotel room in Paris.
Yeah, that's
so we paid for a hotel room in Paris and a hotel room in Marseille on the same day. But it's what you have to do if it's a non-refundable hotel, so that we could go and see the epic match of France versus USA.
I did ask the hotel in Paris if they'd be kind enough to let us out of that evening, and they said no, which is totally fair because that's the contract that we signed. And honestly, planning so far in advance, we knew there'd be some hiccups and there might be a couple things we might have to eat just because you didn't know how the planning was going to go. So if that's our only thing, and honestly, the hotel wasn't that expensive, so it was okay.
No, but the tickets were not that cheap either, though. So we made up for it on the other end. We went to that game, and I'll say that it was 90% French to maybe 10% American / other countries, and because it's out of the capital. It's not where the games are. It's mostly French people that are loving soccer down there, and the crowd was amazing. They were so into it. The chants, they all know these chants that we don't know because they're soccer fans as well.
It was exciting, but it was also really hard to tell what the crowd was because unlike Vancouver, The people in France, people did not dress up. People, all of the countries, you saw very little country wear.
It was disappointing to us in a way because we were excited off of the Winter Olympics that we had been to, where we saw everybody wearing so much garb of their country that all of a sudden we're in France and we're in Paris and hardly anybody's wearing any of their country attire.
Yeah, it was
Except
surprising.
for us. I wore a flag around my neck and like I was Superman, but we were having fun. We were representing. But so Marseille, that is a really cool stadium, wonderful experience. And then the next day we got on a train and beat feet up to Paris so that we could be at.
Well, do you want to talk about how cool our seats were?
Yeah, we probably should. So one of those things where we talked about expense, there's two different kinds of tickets. You can buy standard tickets or you can buy hospitality tickets. Well, for that one, because we were late to the game and we had not bought tickets for the event, we had to buy hospitality seats, which are more expensive, quite a bit more, but they're automatically getting you into the game with good seats, and you get food and drink and all kinds of swag, and it's kind of plush.
You get a special entrance, you get unlimited champagne, you have all these courses of wonderful food, you can go in and out of your hospitality
Very
suite,
bougie.
down to your seats, and it just turns out that our seats were like 50 yard, I don't know if they have a yard line.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not a soccer fan. Sorry. Middle field?
Midfield.
Okay,
line.
they're in the
We
middle
were
of the
right on the
field.
line, and we were sitting in front of the entire Olympic committee that was at
Yeah,
the
they were
game.
behind us. Suckers.
So this was the opening game of the Olympics. It was the first day of the Olympics. Anyways, moving on, we took a train ride up to Paris, and we're in time for the opening ceremonies. So from Marseille, we took a 3-hour train ride, high speed, which is nice, and not a 6-hour train ride.
We
up
had
to
a
Paris.
really good cheeseburger on that train ride.
Surprisingly, a cheeseburger
And little mini wine,
yeah,
and you had to talk really quietly.
yeah. Nobody talks on the trains.
Nobody talks on the trains. It's very strange.
It was weird. Even the kids. There was 2 young kids in the seats next to us. They didn't make a peep the entire thing. I don't know what their
The
parents were
French
telling
are
them, but
very, very respectful.
very quiet.
And they just really all believe in letting you all do your own thing and be quiet. So it was interesting.
So we get up there, and we had a day and a half to get ready for the open. The next day was the opening ceremony, and the opening ceremony this year was something that they'd never done before. The opening ceremony, since its inception, has always been in a stadium. This was the first time they did an outdoor, open-air venue, which was 3 to 4 miles long on the River Seine, where they sent all the athletes on boats and barges up the Seine, waving to the crowds on the shore or on bridges. So we bought
know
tickets
what?
on a bridge.
I've been thinking about this. I would really like to have been a fly on the wall when they were in this planning meeting for this. Like, what an audacious plan. Like, who said, hey, I have an idea. Let's not go in the stadium. Let's use the river. And let's just like have thousands and thousands of people in all these locations.
600,000.
And then everybody else in that room was like, yeah, great idea. I mean, that's a security nightmare, but let's do it. I mean,
And that's what it
you
was.
go, France. That was, having been there and seen it now, I'm like, wow, it was really, really bold and super cool.
So the opening ceremonies, let's just say this. They're designed for home viewership on TV, or unless you're in a stadium. If you're going to do the Seine, it's different. We sat on a bridge. We watched the athletes go by. We saw some cool performers nearby us. But for the most part, we missed all of the activities that were going on the river up and down the Seine. And we kind of knew that was going to happen, but you didn't know how much you were really going to miss because it was so disjointed. We didn't hear them announce half the names of the boats and who was on the boats. And if you weren't paying attention, closely, you couldn't even see the name on the boat because it might be facing the other side of the river. So would we do it again, Julie? Would you do opening ceremony on the Seine if you had the chance?
Yes.
I would not, because it's already been done and we've done it once. This was the one time, like, hey, you got to do it. It's epic. It's unique experience. We did it. I would easily go to an opening ceremony or closing ceremony if it was in a stadium from now on. But
Okay.
I don't think I would do this one
Let's
again.
give a better description, though. So we're on one of the bridges that crosses the River Seine, and we are facing Notre Dame Cathedral. It is right
Stunning.
smack dab in front of us in all of her glory. It's beautiful. I mean, don't feel sorry for us. This was a really, really beautiful bridge to be on. And getting into this, the security line was a little bit cumbersome. So you line up down the street from this bridge in a really long, blocks long line. And not only do you have to go through security for checking your bags and stuff, but they also have to check your tickets and your passports. Like they want to make sure you're legit. And then Tony realized real quickly, we're going to be super hungry because this is like 5 o'clock when we're going in and it doesn't start till 8-ish. So we knew we were going to be stuck on that bridge for quite a while. So he bolted off and he became a hero when he went and found us a pizza. And he literally got back to the line as I was walking up to show my passport information and my security and my ticket. It's perfect timing. And everybody else looked at him like, "Oh, you're freaking brilliant. We should have done that." Because they did have one
Other people
little
started to do that
food truck kind of on that bridge, but it was one for the entire group of people in that risers that they built that went all the way across the bridge.
That line was forever long too, all day, all night.
And there was like 4 porta potties too for the whole thing. But anyway, it was still really, really beautiful, and it was a gorgeous evening up until the part it started pouring rain, like downpour, torrential rain for the entire ceremony.
By the way, I don't think these microphones are going to pick it up, but as we were talking about the rain, it started to rain here, and I can hear it on the roof. So it's kind of cool, but that's not a sound effect we're piping in. If you hear rain, that's real rain.
On our ceiling. Funny. So I mean, it was still really cool. And the Moulin Rouge dancers were right in front of us. That is the section that we got to see if you watched opening ceremonies on TV. That was kind of cool there, right there. And some of the epic flyby and the red, white, and blue, I don't know, fireworks was right behind us that we could kind of see. So it was neat.
We were at the beginning of the course.
But yeah, it was a big expense for kind of not a lot of bang for your buck, I guess.
Yeah, we paid a lot for those seats because we didn't want to miss out on something as unique as that.
And we'll remember it forever, that we were a part of the most epic opening ceremonies. That's true.
Okay, so the next day, the first full day of competition, we had tickets to go see skateboarding. Wow, we didn't expect we were going to go to skateboarding when we thought we were going to the Olympics, but
why not?
The tickets were $47. Like, that's a cheap ticket. So we're like, we'll go in and see what skateboarding at the Olympics looks like.
And it got us into that whole park that you can walk around. There's booths. There's all kinds of attractions. Ironically, we never saw it.
Speaking of the rain, it rained. If you remember the opening ceremonies, it rained until the next day, and they canceled the entire event of the skateboarding, and we did not. And they were going to reschedule it, and we're like, oh no, they're rescheduling it for the day after we leave. But then they came back and said, we're having to cancel the entire event. So luckily, we got money back. They refunded our money back to our account from buying the tickets. So that was nice.
But that's a lesson to learn, too, that any event that you might schedule to go to that could possibly be affected by rain, you might not get your money back if they cancel it and they reschedule it for 2 days later and you've already gone home. That's not their fault. So just be aware. So
instead, the next day we got to go to, which was our big epic day that we were looking forward to forever, was beach volleyball.
I would have been crushed if it had rained that day.
Yeah. So we had an afternoon session that we had bought early on. When we were afraid that we were not going to get tickets, we bought hospitality, and we paid through the nose to get hospitality seats for the afternoon session in the hot sun because we knew it was going to be hot and sunny, hopefully, and there's no shade in an open-air stadium.
That's not why.
Just let me get to it. Booze and food.
No.
Also, you get great seats, and you're right underneath the Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower!
So this stadium, as people are saying, is the most unbelievable, iconic stadium of all time in the Olympics because they built it on the green space out in front of the Eiffel Tower at the base. So every seat in the stadium looks up at the Eiffel Tower. You can see the Eiffel Tower. It was
so cool. And it's temporary. It's going to be gone after the Olympics. So it is something that you can only go to one time and then it is done. And we said, put us in that place. We're doing that.
So later on, we also found out that there was tickets available for the late night one, which is in the dark, and then you get the twinkling of the Eiffel Tower at night.
Sparkling.
So we had a 3-hour session in the daytime, an hour that we had to leave. They exit everybody out of the stadium, and then everybody comes back in for the night session, and we had both. And I'll tell you, we made them pay for the amount of booze you're allowed to drink for the ticket price.
You're making us sound like bad people.
No, we just took advantage of it because our seats were really good, but what we did was when we were standing up underneath the shade of this hospitality...
Yeah, we had shade. Nobody else had shade, by the way.
We were up on the hospitality patio. there was a table off to the side, but there's a railing. I'm like, wow, we're right at half court. We could sit here, but there's no table. Can we move this table over here?
Just
And
a
they
little
said-
bistro table.
They
Two
said,
tip-
yeah.
two top.
So we moved it over, and we said, we're never sitting in our seats. We're 3 feet from the bar, and the people are walking around with trays of food right to our table, and they don't get any food or drink down in the stands. So we said, we're going to sit here all day. And we met the most wonderful family from Carolina that we hung out with for 2 hours, 3 hours with, got to know their family. It was so much fun. And that was another, like, one of those people you get to meet that it means something. And I will always remember those people.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. And we watched the matches and they were awesome. And it was just, you look one direction and you see beach volleyball, and you look the other direction and there's the Eiffel Tower. Oh my gosh, it was so cool.
So from that, we left, had to leave, come back in for the nighttime, and our seats were directly behind the service line, 4 rows up. So we were on TV a lot that day and that night. Our daughter kept on texting us saying, "You're on TV. You're on TV."
And she could tell it was us because we had our brand new hats on that we got as swag from the hospitality suite, which was kind of cool. And we were fat and happy. We were fed. We had some. We had a lovely time. We were full. We had plenty to eat and drink early on, so we didn't even need anything. We just enjoyed the game. It was perfect.
So, and then the last cool thing about the Olympics that we saw for games or activities or things was the flame. Julie, tell us about the flame, because this is unique.
You know what? We walked down to the flame. It must have been almost midnight, or it was late in the evening. One of the nights when we walked down to go see the flame. It's just by the Louvre and that arch.
It's out in the Tuileries.
In the Tuileries, there's like another mini Arch de Triomphe out there. That flame was so magical. It was against the dark sky. It's this big globe that lights up, and it glows, and it seems really ethereal and magical, and you kind of can't define it. It was really, really beautiful.
If you saw it on TV, it's a hot air balloon. Basically, they made a hot air balloon with a ring of flame that goes around it, and in the daytime, they keep it down on the ground so people can come into the gardens and look at it. And then when it gets dark
I think
at night,
you couldn't get that close to it, though.
you couldn't at first, not that night. But then from that time on, you can come into the gardens and see it during the day. And then at night, they lift it up, and it goes up over the city really high so that everybody around the city can see it. You could see it from a mile or two away.
Unless it was windy, then they had to bring it down, I think. But I don't think it would be nearly as beautiful as it was in the evening. Like the morning time, I don't know if we didn't see it then, so I don't know. But
saw pictures of it, though.
It's really raining hard now and blowing, so if you can hear stuff.
That's hail. Hail on the roof.
Hail, fantastic.
So that was our experiences on the Olympics and the things that we went to and how we organized it and how we did it.
So at this point, I told Tony earlier, I said, I'm going to hijack the podcast.
I have no idea what's coming.
At the end, because I have something I want to share. Now, I digress a little bit. It does have a little bit to do with one of our last podcasts that we just discussed. And one of the things we talked about was Roman Colosseums. And I had made a comment and I had said, I want to see all the Roman Colosseums that are left in the world. And you said, oh my gosh.
There's a lot.
Turns out there are, but I have a couple really interesting points that I just want to share with you. So there are 230
That's a lot.
Roman Colosseums and or amphitheaters left in the world. However, only 4 still are in use today for like events and programming. This does not include the Colosseum in Rome. So being a visitor and just touring it doesn't count. So here's the really cool thing. One of them is the amphitheater in Nîmes, which we went to, and we didn't mention, we said we saw a concert. But the thing we didn't mention was there's actually a festival that goes from May through July in Nîmes, and it's a festival of music. And so there are lots of different concerts that you could go to, and I felt remiss in not sharing that with people. Didn't just have to be in July. And also that venue holds 24,000 people in posterity. That's what it used to hold. Now it holds 16,000. So even with the stuff that they all put in for, whatever things they need to do for concerts, it still holds a ton of people. Okay, the second one is in Arles. Check. Saw that one too. The one in Arles we didn't go to an event in, but they typically have bullfighting in that one, and I don't think I'd want to do that. Anyway.
Both of those are in France.
Yep.
Third, I know where you're going.
The third one is in Pula,
Croatia. Check.
Which, check. We've been to that one too. And that will be in another podcast and another time because that
And
is...
4?
4 is the Arena de Verona in Italy. So Verona, Italy. And the reason why this is pertinent to our current podcast is because you're going to die, Tony. The Verona Amphitheater or the arena is planned to be used as the closing ceremonies venue for the 2026 Winter Olympics. And it's going to be the opening venue for the 2026 Winter Paralympics.
So that might be a check.
So guess what?
Oh, we're going to...
We got to figure out how to get to
we're
Verona.
already on the tickets list for Verona. I've already
closing
made...
ceremonies. We haven't been to closing yet.
I've already made reservation inquiries to a couple of hotels where they said that we can get in up in Cortina. So we will be at that Olympics.
We are planning on being at that Olympics.
So
that is
that we
correct.
can knock off the 4th one. Well, that's awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining us on this Olympic heavy podcast today. Thank you, Julie and Caleb. Our next podcast, a little heads up. This was our 4th of 4 on France, the Olympics, Tour de France, everything involved. But what we didn't really talk a ton about was Paris. And we're like, you know what?
Oops.
Bonus. We're going to do a bonus episode on France, kind of number 5 out of 4. That doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to us. So we're going to come back on the next episode and talk about Paris and our favorites. Some of the things that we like that maybe are on the beaten path and maybe off the beaten path.
And also maybe some quirky things that happened.
Yep, some funny stories, which I almost alluded to today on one of them, but we're going to tell you next time. So tune back in on the next episode. Thank you for joining us on episode 6, and wheels up.